Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. A plan is underway to fast-track the rebuilding of Jasper after the Rocky Mountain town lost a third of its homes and businesses to a wildfire. A new report by the Fraser Institute says Canadians pay more in taxes than housing, clothing, and food combined. We have the details. And the political leader of the terrorist group Hamas was taken out in Tehran. Our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari will have more.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. Premier Daniel Smith is hoping to fast-track the rebuilding of Jasper. A committee has been struck by the province on ways to restore the Rocky Mountain town as quickly as possible, including expediting development permits. Jasper lost a third of its homes and businesses when a wildfire torched the western part of the town last week. There's still no timeline for when around 5,000 residents can return home and tour the damage. Alberta Days of Caring for Jasper is an initiative where communities can donate to those impacted by the wildfires that hit Jasper. Dale Williams, Director of Operations for Ability Resources, says Lethbridge is setting a good example of being a community that helps those in need. Williams says community members are bringing in bottles to help raise funds for those most in need.
As an association, we love to be part of opportunities to give to other people in need. And so all of the depots in Alberta, there's over 220 of them in the network, are accepting donations today for the wildfires to help people who have been affected. And we have a couple of bins that people can drop them off if they don't want to wait in line, or if the customers wait in line and they tell us it's for Jasper, then the money will go to the wildfires. At the South Depot, there are over $600 of donations so far.
Williams says the fundraising initiative began on Monday and will run until Saturday at 5 o'clock. He says all of the depots here in Lethbridge and across the province will be receiving the donations. Alberta Wildfires says our province has seen just 3 new wildfires begin over the past 24 hours. There are currently 114 wildfires burning in Alberta. Officials say the evacuation order for Jasper and Jasper National Park remains in effect, as does the evacuation order for the North Ranchlands area of the municipal district of Bighorn. Evacuation orders are also in effect for Little Red River Cree Nation and Chippewan Lake. 23 of our province's wildfires are still listed as out of control. 45 are being held and 49 are now under control. In British Columbia, meanwhile, recent rain and cooler weather have knocked down the wildfire activity there. Officials say the northern part of the province has seen quite a bit of rain lately. They say the southern interior, however, is still hot and dry and needs more rain.
We've been fortunate to have had rain and cooler temperatures throughout much of the province over the last several days, offering much needed relief to many communities. Many evacuation orders due to the Shetland Creek wildfire in the Venables Valley have been downgraded to an evacuation alert, including for Ashcroft and for Cache Creek. And thankfully, the remaining orders and alerts that were in place for the Antler Creek wildfire have all been lifted, including for Wells and for Barkerville. With that being said, wildfires continue to challenge people and communities, particularly in the central Kootenay region. As of this morning, there are approximately 1,350 people under an evacuation order, primarily in the central Kootenay region. Additionally, there are 2,800 people under an evacuation alert.
Well, the hot temperatures continued for much of our region here in southwestern Alberta again today. Jeanette Rocher is now with a quick peek at the forecast. Jeanette, we should be seeing above 30 degrees over the next few days?
Yes, and particularly tomorrow, we are going to be seeing very hot temperatures as we kickstart that month of August. We're seeing a high of 34 degrees on a Thursday. Not quite a record breaker, but almost. We would have to be closer to 36 degrees to actually get there. And you know what, as we get closer to the long weekend, we're going to start to see that mercury shrink back to the high 20s. Now, this evening, we're seeing an overnight low of 15 degrees. Also some winds from the west, 30 gusting to 50 kilometers per hour, mainly clear skies. And then as we get into Thursday, that wind dying down more to 20 kilometers per hour to go along with all that sunshine and blue sky. And I'll be back later in the show to tell you how that long weekend is shaping up. Hal?
Great. Thanks so much, Jeanette. Many fingers are pointing to the Israeli Defense Forces as being responsible for the elimination of Hamas political leader Ismail Haniyeh. The Israel Defense Forces, however, have not claimed responsibility for the attack on the terrorist political leader. Foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari of the Foreign Desk explains how Haniyeh was killed in Iran and what he was doing there.
We believe that it was a missile that killed him. The Israeli military has not come out, or the government has not come out to take responsibility for this hit, but we assume that it would be them who would carry out an assassination attack against this high-ranking leader of Hamas. It's interesting because they could have taken him out. If it is the Israeli army, they could have taken him out in Qatar, they could have taken him out in Gaza, they could have taken him out in Turkey where he'd be traveling, but they took him out on Iranian soil. And that was because this was a buy one, get one. It served two purposes, obviously to take out an influential member of Hamas's terror organization, but also to deliver that stern message to the Islamic Republic inside Iran to say, we can take any one of you out because you have this vulnerability in your airspace. We were able to use intel, we were able to use military might, and we took out we committed this assassination on Iranian soil. Now, Haniyeh was in Iran because he wanted to attend the inauguration of the Islamic Republic's new President Pezeshkian, and he attended the inauguration, goes back to where he was staying, which was this small home in the northern part of Tehran, and they took him out in his bedroom, and along with one of his security guards. So, the one thing that is important to remember, because of Iran, basically, or the Islamic Republic and Hamas pointing fingers at Israel and Israel not taking responsibility for this, is to remember that Israel is not in the business of flexing. This is not what they want, but rather they're in the business of survival. They want to take out these very, very harmful, dangerous terrorists in order to ensure, one step closer to safety and security for Israel.
So who exactly was this political leader of Hamas who was allegedly killed by an Israeli airstrike in Tehran? Apparently, Ismail Haniyeh was pretty high on the political ranks of the terrorist group. We have more now in this report from Luke Garrett of the Associated Press.
Haniyeh was born in a refugee camp in Gaza in 1962 and joined Hamas when it was founded in 1987. He rose through the group's ranks until he became its top political leader. In 1992, he was detained by Israeli authorities, spending 3 years in jail before being deported to Lebanon. He returned to the Gaza Strip following the 1993 interim peace accords, signed by Israel and the Palestine Liberation Organization. Haniyeh assumed the position of Prime Minister in the Palestinian government after Hamas won legislative elections in 2006. Hamas violently overran Gaza in 2007, routing forces loyal to the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas's Fatah faction and installing itself as ruler of the tiny coastal enclave, with Haniyeh as Prime Minister. In 2017, he was elected as chairman of Hamas's political bureau. He has lived in self-imposed exile in Qatar since 2019. He has been taking part in negotiations meant to bring about a ceasefire in Gaza and the freeing of hostages. Deeply religious and well-educated, he was seen as a more moderate figure in Hamas, but less involved in military affairs. The conflict between Israel and Hamas had affected him personally. 3 of his sons, his sister, and 4 of his grandchildren were killed in separate strikes this year. Most recently, Haniyeh had overseen the reconciliation of Hamas and Fatah, with the signing of a national unity agreement aimed at ruling post-war Gaza. Israel vowed to kill Haniyeh and other leaders of Hamas over the group's October 7th attack on Israel. The Israeli army declined to comment.
Lethbridge police have laid more drug trafficking charges as part of its ongoing efforts to crack down on drugs and crime in the downtown core. Police say during the operation, they executed 34 outstanding warrants, arrested 14 people, and laid 20 criminal charges. Police also seized around 200 doses of fentanyl and methamphetamine, along with recovering a stolen vehicle, and issued a number of tickets. Please see if you see any drug-related activity in your community to call them right away at 403-328-4444. After 7 weeks, the trial of Anthony Olenek and Chris Carbert will head to the jury for deliberations. Justice David Labrenz issued his charge to the jurors, which are legal instructions and a trial summary for the jury to take into account. Labrenz reminded the jury that all evidence must satisfy beyond reasonable doubt if the jury is to issue a guilty verdict. The accused must also be given the benefit of the doubt. Reportedly, the judge also told the jury to bring overnight kits in the event their deliberations are prolonged into the evening or even multiple days. The verdict will be given at any time when the jury wraps up deliberations. You know, there's a new report from the Fraser Institute which says Canadians are paying way too much in taxes. The study says we pay more in taxes than housing, clothing, and food combined. The author of the study is Jake Fuss, who says taxes in all shapes and sizes are making life much more difficult for Canadians.
It can be challenging for Canadian families to calculate all the different types of taxes they pay. So that's why every year we calculate the total tax bill for them. And in 2023, we found the average Canadian family spent roughly 43% of their annual income on taxes. So this includes not just personal income taxes, but things like property taxes, sales taxes, fuel taxes when you're paying up at the pump, or sales taxes or other categories as well. And this is more than you spend on housing, clothing, and food combined, which amounts to just about 36% of the income for the average Canadian family. So taxes are really the single largest expense that are currently faced by Canadian families.
The province says there will be more support for future farmers and ranchers thanks to changes to the Agriculture Financial Service Corporation's Next Generation Loan Program. Officials say over the past 2 decades, the number of young and middle-aged producers in agriculture has seen very steep declines. Agriculture Minister R.J. Sigurdsson says by updating the program, more young Albertans will have fewer barriers when entering the agriculture industry.
Entering or getting back into agriculture is not without its challenges right now, which is partly why over the last 20 years we've seen fewer and fewer Albertans under 45 getting into agriculture. We've also seen Alberta farm families struggle with the challenges around succession planning. And we're aiming to turn those trends around with changes to AFSC's Next Generation Loan Program. We've expanded eligibility on a couple aspects, the interest rate incentive and ownership requirements. Under these changes, the eligibility for a 1% interest rate incentive has been expanded to include new and returning farmers. And to help with succession planning, it also has been expanded to cover producers of any age, including those 40 and older.
The Court of Arbitration for Sport has dismissed Canada's appeal of a 6-point penalty against its Olympic women's soccer team. We have more now on the decision from Morgan Lowry of the Canadian Press.
The Court of Arbitration for Sport released their decision only hours before the soccer game is supposed to take place. And Canada Soccer and the Canadian Olympic Committee had been appealing that 6-point deduction that was given by FIFA in the wake of the Canadian staffer being caught spying on New Zealand practices with a drone. And essentially, they have rejected to hear the appeal. They did not publish their decision because of the urgency of the matter. They say they'll give reasons at a later date, but essentially that 6-point deduction will stand. They had asked for even that deduction to be reduced. I think that even if a few of those points had been taken off, that would have been a very welcome decision to the Canadian team. However, they have been prepared, I think, to play anyways, to win anyways, to try to move forward without it, and that is what they'll have to do.
It's also reported in an email that details how suspended head coach Bev Priestman claimed that spying was a regular practice for the women's team, and now the Canadian men's team might also have their own operation. By the way, speaking of the women's team, our team Canada beat Colombia 1-0 on Wednesday, which secures second place in Group A and will move them past the group stage. They'll go on to play Germany in the final 8 on Saturday. Now, speaking of the Paris Games, the Canadian women's 3-on-3 basketball team, featuring U of L Pronghorn's assistant coaches Paige Croson and Casey Bosch, are off to a solid start. The medal favorite Canadians beat Australia on Tuesday 22-14 and China on Wednesday 21-11. Group stage games will continue until August the 5th, when the medal games are set to be played. Well, the long weekend is fast approaching and families are enjoying visiting places near Lethbridge to make the most of their summer. However, for the Plasma Donor Center here in Lethbridge, this represents a drop in plasma donations. Brenna Scott, Business Development Manager for Lethbridge Canadian Blood Services Plasma, says the institution needs to keep up with the demand.
but the need for blood and plasma doesn't stop. So this weekend in Lethbridge, we do have about 100 appointments that do need to be filled. Right now, we're meeting the need for patients in hospitals, but that can always change if we don't fill these appointments. Not just in Lethbridge, we do have a lot of appointments open throughout the long weekend all across Canada. So if people do have an hour to spare, we'd love to have them in. It's very simple to make an appointment. You can either call 1-888-2-DONATE. You can book online at blood.ca, download our free Give Blood app, or just come in and we can book you an appointment in person. So right now, 1 in 2 Canadians are eligible to donate blood or plasma, but only 1 in every 76 do.
By the way, the Plasma Donor Center in Lethbridge is open for the rest of the week, including on Saturday. You know, for most of us, summer is at least halfway over, but for the owners of the Lethbridge Corn Maze, the season and the fun has just begun. The local tourist attraction opened this week for its 2024 season, which marks its 25th anniversary of the family-run business. BCN's Brett Brown was out at the Corn Maze and has more.
Each summer, the Lethbridge Corn Maze welcomes thousands of visitors to its location northwest of the city. Owner Theo Slingerland says corn mazes are popular attractions these days, but when they opened their doors 25 years ago, they were the first of their kind in Alberta.
We started our first corn maze and we were hoping that a lot of people would come out, but nobody knew what a corn maze was at that time. So it took a little bit of time, but over the last 25 years, people know, there's almost nobody that doesn't know what a corn maze is anymore. So we've been growing steadily and adding things every year.
The Lethbridge Corn Maze not only features several corn mazes, but farm animals, a petting zoo, a playground for the kids, a jumping pillow, zip lines, and a number of other attractions. Each year, part of the proceeds from the Corn Maze support World Vision, and every Thanksgiving, they hold a fundraiser where all admission proceeds go to support a good cause.
We have a beautiful place that we can enjoy. We share it with other people. People are giving us money and enjoying it and telling us how much they like it. We like to give back. So we can't keep it all ourselves, and there's people that need it, so we want to share it with those who are in need, because we have so much compared to so many other people.
Owners say the Lethbridge Corn Maze attracts visitors from all over the world. The maze will be open until the end of October. For Bridge City News, I'm Brett Brown.
Brett, I got to say, I love your new set of wheels. Very nice, very snazzy. Well, we enjoyed more sunshine again today in Lethbridge, and nice and hot. Good time to head out to the Corn Maze, and the sizzling hot temperatures will continue for the remainder of the week. Full weather details are on deck. You know, the average high for this time of year is around 26 degrees. We were well above that temperature once again here in Lethbridge. Jeanette Rocher is now with all of the weather details. Jeanette, this would be kind of a fun time to run through the sprinkler with the kids, no matter what their ages are.
Oh, that would feel amazing in this weather, particularly as we see what's coming at us on Thursday. And the good news is that will be the hottest day over the next 7-day period. So we're looking at that high of 34 degrees on Thursday, mainly sunny skies, not quite the record breaker. And then we get down to 31 on Friday, 29 on Saturday, 26 on Sunday, which is actually the average high for this time of year. Could see a chance of showers Sunday as well. Back to 26 on Monday and down to 25 degrees on Tuesday. So we are looking at that average high of 26 degrees for this time of year. Average low is 11:34. That was our high temperature on this day back in 1973. That's where we'll be at tomorrow. And then the lowest on record on this day was back in 1968. It was only 3 degrees. Okay, sun rose this morning at 6:02 and sunset this evening at 9:13 p.m., giving us 15 hours, 11 minutes of daylight, 3 minutes shorter than we saw yesterday. Sunny on the west coast tomorrow. Victoria, high of 26 degrees, more like 20 where the onshore winds blow. 25 in Vancouver with clear skies. Edmonton sitting at 28 tomorrow. Could see a 30% chance of showers and risk of thunderstorms. Calgary under a bit of a heat warning there. High of 31 tomorrow and clear skies as well. The rest of the prairies also fairly sunny. Saskatoon looking at 30 degrees. Regina 32, seeing a heat warning going on into part of the weekend there. 32 degrees expected tomorrow in Winnipeg as well. Also clear skies there. As we get to the central part of the country, we are seeing a lot of heat warnings in effect here. 31 degrees in Toronto. Could see a chance of showers, risk of thunderstorms. High of 30 And Ottawa as well, same thing. Those showers expected. And Montreal as well, 30 degrees and a 30% chance of showers. Heat warnings in all of those areas as well into the long weekend there. As we get into Atlantic Canada, Fredericton, 25 could see a chance of showers. 60% chance of showers expected tomorrow. In Halifax, there 25 for a high. I should actually mention Fredericton could see up to 15 millimeters of rain. So quite a bit of moisture there in Fredericton. Down to Charlottetown there, 27 for the high and 28 for the high in St. John's with a mix of sun and clouds. So there you have it. That is your forecast.
A new report from the Conference Board of Canada says a third of all agriculture jobs will be automated in Canada within the next 10 years. The report says around 20% of food and beverage manufacturing jobs could also become automated within the same time frame. It says routine and repetitive tasks in agriculture are expected to become automated, replacing a large portion of human labor. An increase in the use of technology, however, is expected to lead to a growing demand for data scientists, software engineers, and other kinds of high-tech roles. Financial debt doesn't only impact our bank accounts, but can also impact us mentally, physically, and relationally. Jane Enet is an associate professor of finance at Biola University and author of the book Whole Heart Finances. He explains how we each have different money personalities, which can shed some light on the big spender versus cheap saver conflict in relationships.
There's a lot of ways to categorize how people are naturally going to relate to money. And once you kind of, first step is to figure out your natural money personality, how you relate to money naturally, and then to compare that to your spouse or to your, significant other. And once you've identified how you relate to money, the next step is to celebrate the strengths of that person's kind of money personality. And so I walk through the strengths, and then the weaknesses, you don't try and change the other person. You actually try and work on your weaknesses of your money personality.
Make sure you catch more of this informative interview with Shane Enet, author of Whole Heart Finances, and BCN's Jeanette Rocher coming up later in our broadcast. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 286 points on the day to finish at 23,110. The Dow was up 99 points to 40,842. The S&P 500 was down 85 on the day to 5522, and the Nasdaq was up 451 points to 17,599. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up 318 to 77.91 US per barrel. Natural gas was down 7 cents to 204 US. Gold was up 15.68 on the day to 24.2315 US an ounce, and silver was up $1.19 to 28.79 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $7.57 per bushel, barley's at $5.79, canola's at $14.20, and corn is at $7.19 per bushel. Live cattle August contract was down $1.53 to $179.98. Feeder cattle August contract was up 28 cents to $257.25, and lean hogs August contract was up $1.08 to $92.28. The Canadian dollar was up slightly over the past 24 hours to 72.40 US. Recapping one of our top stories, Premier Daniel Smith is hoping to fast-track the rebuilding of Jasper. A committee has been struck by the province on ways to restore the Rocky Mountain town as quickly as possible, including expediting development permits. Jasper lost a third of its homes and businesses when a wildfire torched the western part of the town last week. There is still no timeline for when around 5,000 residents can return home and survey the damage. Did you know there's a new guide to help you manage your money? The Associate Professor of Finance at Biola University, Shane Enet, will share details in an interview with BCN's Jeanette Rocher momentarily. Listen, when you see news happening in your community, be sure to drop us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. Also, be sure to visit our website anytime to check out a number of stories and interviews.
Well, Western society has perhaps the wealthiest group of people the world has ever seen, yet many of us are in debt and are anxious and afraid about our finances. But from the Christian perspective, is this how God wants us to live? Well, today's guest has some thoughts on this. Joining us from Southern California is Dr. Shane Enett. He is an associate professor of finance at Biola University and the author of Whole Heart Finances, a Jesus-centered guide to managing your money with joy. Welcome to Bridge City News, Professor Enett. Great to have you on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course. Okay, so your book has an interesting title, Whole Heart Finances. Maybe can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, for me, as I became passionate about finance and managing money when I was in high school. And for whatever reason, my uncle gave me this book about investing, and it set me on a quest. I wanted to learn everything there was to know about how to manage money. It seemed like a question that had so many ways to answer, and I wanted to find what's the right answer for this question. And I was also passionate about my relationship with Jesus. And so for me, I wanted to make sure that as I learned about money, it drew me closer to Jesus and not farther away. And I got frustrated because the more I learned about money, the more I felt like the language around money and finance was not compatible with the language around faith. And it seemed to be almost like the better you got with money, the farther away from a passionate walk with Jesus you would become. And so when you leave Jesus out of any part of your life, especially money, since it's so close to our hearts, you actually fracture your heart. And so my goal in this book is to help build a bridge between the language of money and the language of faith so that people can love Jesus with their whole hearts.
Oh, isn't that interesting? Okay, well, I mean, most of us are not strangers to being worried about money at least some point in our life. Money, finances. I think it's like one of the number one causes of anxiety, right?
Yeah, consistently in the Western world, when people list what they're worried about, money is the top.
Wow. And I guess like with so many of us in serious financial debt, how is this impacting our family units? It's not good, is it?
Yeah, debt it impacts us in psychological ways and physical ways. So, they've shown that a lot of over 25% of Americans at least are suffering from financial PTSD, and it's largely related to debt. And so debt also has, a certain spiritual bondage where we have less choices in our life. And a lot of people who want to go into ministry are kind of burdened by this debt and they can't. And then, just they're showing studies that our physical bodies are actually impacted by debt as well. And so when you bring in another person, like an institution that now has some sort of power over you, like a bank or a certain person that you owe money to, and it could even be other family members. But debt itself, the Bible just kind of warns us that this is something that can impact us in so many ways, and it's better to showcase our freedom in Christ to also be free fiscally, and that can be show off a little bit more of who we are in Christ, which is free in many ways.
Yeah, definitely. I can see how that can affect the body, starting with sleepless nights, and of course that
Yep.
that will start to trigger a whole host of health issues. And like you were saying, the family unit, it can really affect that as well, right? Like couples, husbands, wives.
Yeah, the top cause for divorce and relational tension is consistently listed as money. And so fights over money and debt just constrains your options, and it makes it so you have less and less ability to kind of weather any type of financial, trauma or emergency. And so when you're trying to work together and money itself is already kind of this very hard subject, then debt just kind of like magnifies the trouble and makes it so that people often will cite money as their reason for their breaking up or the reason for their big trauma in their relationship.
Yeah. Now, do you have any advice for couples who have opposing views of how to spend or save money?
Sure. Yeah. So my book goes through a chapter on money personalities, and there's a lot of ways to categorize how people are naturally going to relate to money. And the once you kind of first step is to figure out your natural money personality, how you relate to money naturally, and then to compare that to your spouse or to your significant other. And once you've identified how you relate to money, the next step is to celebrate the strengths of that person's kind of money personality. And so I walk through the strengths, and then the weaknesses, you don't try and change the other person. You actually try and work on your weaknesses of your money personality and focus on that. And it brings a great humility. And so that you can kind of come together and have a better understanding of each other. And for example, if often a non-spender money personality will marry a big spender, and so there's a lot of tension around that. And so one thing about a non-spender is they can live a simple life that can be beautiful. And I like to compare it to Maria from Sound of Music, who, comes to her new life with a guitar and just a bag, and that's it. And she's singing. Whereas you could say the non-spender is a Scrooge, who just wants to control everyone and not do anything fun. Or the big spender, you could say, is this, person that just wants to kind of get everyone into debts and just not have any self-control. Or you could say the big spender is this hospitable person that sees and can really enjoy life through the material world and make everyone feel welcome and loved and create good, beautiful spaces for everyone to have community.
We love those people.
Yeah, right now. So the relational conflicts happen when the non-spender says the big spender's bad, and when the big spender says the non-spender's bad. Instead, it'd be great just to identify who you are and then work on creating the most healthy version of yourself. Don't try and become a non-spender if you're a big spender. Don't try and, become the other person. But as you see Jesus, who has a really healthy, I call it he's got a holy looseness about money, and he's got a holy materialism where, he wants to be generous, but he also isn't fixated on stuff to such an extent that he'll get it, in an irresponsible way. And so as you kind of set your eyes on Christ, you actually become a much healthier non-spender if you are, or a much healthier big spender if you are that money personality. And there's a few other money personalities, and there's a few other ways of looking at someone and who they are when it comes to relating to money. But that's just one example.
Yeah, probably most of us don't even recognize what kind of a spender we are. It's usually other people that bring it to our attention, right?
Yeah.
How important is a budget, and how many people actually have a budget set in place?
Yeah, budget is one of those words that is like diet. It's pox on that word, and so people tend to really get kind of angry about the idea of a budget. And one of the big reasons is because someone who does a budget tries to restrict themselves, and usually they do it without any information about how they spend money. And so just like with dieting, it's better to count calories before you try and restrict anything. And with a budget, I like to use the word spending plan. And instead of going right into trying to restrict your spending, it's better just to keep track of what you're doing. And the book walks through a bunch of spending plan apps that you can download on your phone, or you can, there's some paper methods as well. But just tracking what you're doing, you can do with 100% success. It's something simple. It's just a matter of getting into a habit of doing it. And once you shine a light bright on your spending, you start to change. You actually start to change how you spend money because you're given the information, and you also get to see very clearly what's happening and have a conversation with your spouse, with your family, and with the Lord. And it's a really beautiful way of being able to just naturally move forward. And then I usually recommend 6 months of tracking before trying to restrict anything. And then you can start to make a proactive plan where you're going to potentially do less of something so that you could do more of something else.
Right. I like that spending plan instead of budgeting. So what are the basics of budgeting or this spending plan?
Yeah, the basics. So the one way that can really facilitate a natural love of, so first thing is you need to recognize money is not yours, it's given. And so we're not an owner, we're actually a steward. And getting into a steward mindset then becomes a matter of recognizing as we receive, we actually have a moment we get to be grateful. And gratitude, they've shown in psychological research, affects every single aspect of our well-being. And so once we start seeing that paying, the DMV or the car registration fee, or paying groceries, all of that is provision. And so we get to have a moment of being grateful for the Lord's daily provision. And while we're doing that, we're tracking it. And so we track it into, let's say, a budget app that's just automatically puts all your transactions from your bank or your credit card into one place, and you just kind of categorize it. So I spend 3 minutes a day. If I forget a day or if I go on vacation, then I'll spend about 20 minutes at the end of the week. And that's a moment of me experiencing gratitude. And it's actually an act of worship because I'm a steward and then I'm recognizing God's provision. And that really motivates me then to set a plan for the future because I want to do more. And so Paul, he says with any spending plan, the ultimate goal is to excel in the grace of giving. And so we engage in some discipline of tracking and maybe spending a little bit less so that we can avoid debt and so that we can give more. And that's kind of the goal. That's the end goal. And all of that works towards glory to Jesus and towards intimacy with him, because giving engages the gospel over and over again because we're doing it in response to his giving towards us. Does that help with the mechanics of it?
Yeah, I know, like in your book, you list the 3 keys to money stewardship, and that's kind of part of it, isn't it?
Yeah, the 3 keys of just kind of recognizing that, we are in Christ. So we are this new creation. We have this new generosity that's flowing through us. And our new mission is no longer just to save and accumulate for consumption. Most people's main mission in money is to accumulate, is to consume. But now we have a different mission, and is to follow through with what God's doing, which is to help the world see his beauty, his perfection, his love. And we get to use what's being given to us with that new mission. And so again, I love 2 Corinthians 8 and 9. It's the longest passage on money in the Bible, so it's my favorite part of the Bible. And really, Paul's like, this is how you think about money: is how can you use whatever's happening, whether you're spending or saving or giving, how can you do that in a way that's letting you excel in this grace of giving? And so saving is something that there's a new purpose for saving. You don't not save, because saving is a great tool to help avoid debt. And because there's just times where you just all of a sudden stop having income, and that's just a reality. And savings, like a barn that a farmer may use. It's not bad that a farmer sets aside a surplus of crop to get through the winter and then sell it. A barn makes him a better farmer. And I think in the same way, our savings accounts help make us a better giver, make us better Christians, because we are preparing for those inevitable winters. But we don't want to get too many barns, and we don't want to do it for the sake of consumption or the sake of protection, because the Lord has kind of promised those things already. And so now we're just trying to image him, trying to show off who he is and who we are in him.
In Christian circles anyway, the conversation of tithes and offerings come up often. So how can we get to a place of being able to give joyfully, not just out of duty, and also without worry?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think giving, too often people just only imagine one way of giving, and that's just a percentage of a paycheck. Or there's actually, I've identified 8 different giving systems that you could engage in, and I think you should find the one that's that you're most excited about, that's most aligned to your personality. God's made everyone different, and giving is so personal. Why shouldn't it kind of align to our personalities? And so when I think first fruit giving is always going to be a part, because you can kind of develop. I have 3 or 4 of these giving systems that are kind of all working together in my life. And there's certain ones that get me super excited, and there's certain ones that don't. And so I don't do those ones. For example, a giving goal is where you, instead of being focused on some percentage of income, I say, I want to give this amount by the time I retire. Or I want to give this amount by the time, my child turns 10. And that I'm very competitive, and that kind of motivates me. That gets me excited about giving. And so then, and there's a lot of other ways you can give. A giving circle is a beautiful way that motivates quite a bit, and it hits different areas of your heart. So giving circles where you just come together with a group of people, find one cause that everyone is excited about, and then you pool the money and give towards that. And I could see that igniting a certain type of giving that's not perfunctory, it's not legalistic, it's just we're responding to God's grace.
I like that. We're out of time here, but Shane, thanks so much for being with us today to discuss this very important topic of finance. It's on everybody's mind all the time, right?
It's true. Yeah. No, thank you for having me.
Of course. Dr. Shane Enet is the author of Whole Heart Finances, a Jesus-centered guide to managing your money with joy. Well, we all get excited when a relative or friend decides to get married, but there's usually an incredible amount of work and planning that goes into it. Usually that means stress as well. And today's guest is an expert on these kinds of things and joins us from Medicine Hat, Alberta. Kim Friesen is a wedding planner and the owner of Weatherwood Events. Good to have you with us today, Kim. Welcome.
Thank you. It's nice to join you.
Awesome. Okay, we are still in the height of wedding season right now, and planning for weddings certainly can be stressful. There are so many details. Where do you start? Do you need to look at the big picture first, set a budget and a date?
Yes, every client that I speak with, we start with budget. And that's the most important thing because everything reflects off what their budget is. So for sure, when you start working with me, that's the first thing I'm going to ask you is what is your budget for this wedding?
What if you don't know? It's like, gee, I don't know. I've never been married before. I've never been engaged. I don't know where to start. Do you kind of help them do you ask questions to just sort of guide them to what a good budget might look like?
Yes, and I can outline some of the basics, like your venue costs, your food costs, what kind of food do you want? And then I start to show them what their budget will look like. And really it's about finding what's your maximum and um and then we go from there. And then we have to get creative sometimes,
Yeah, it's like
which
how
is
much are you
fun.
willing
Yeah.
to spend? How much debt are you willing to go into over this? And yeah, no, exactly. How far in advance should couples be booking the wedding and reception venues?
We're seeing things really change. Actually, post COVID, I have clients that are booking up to 2 years in advance. I also did a wedding in March. We only had 3 months. So it can be done. It's just you have to be flexible. Are you flexible with your dates? Are you flexible with your venue? But if there's particular venues and a particular date you want, then for sure a year in advance is a great place to start.
Wow. Okay. So if it's an outdoor wedding, of course, these can always be iffy. So what are some of the key points in planning something like this?
Well, we are in southern Alberta, so always having a secondary plan if you haven't booked tents.
With a
Then you
windshield,
also have
right?
to, yes, absolutely, absolutely. I have taken weddings down and put them back up half an hour before reception start because of wind. So you just have to, there's a lot of things to take into consideration with weather, power. Do you have power supply? Washroom, adequate washrooms. Prep tents for your catering. There's lots of little details with outdoor weddings. And I think a lot of clients feel like they're going to save money by being outdoors. And in actuality, sometimes it can become more expensive. So, something to keep in mind. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so decisions need to be made for who will be in the wedding party and what they will be wearing, including the bride and groom. So, any advice on this?
Yeah. Usually, when a client begins working with me, they've already picked their colors, they've already picked their wedding party. That's kind of
Ooh,
the first thing most
well,
clients
they were
do. So,
well
then
ahead of
when
me
I'm
then.
yeah, and I think a lot of girls, a lot of clients have been thinking about this since they were little. And so they've got those things in their head. So just advice is to make everything cohesive. So if you've already picked your color palette, then your whole wedding should reflect that. And most girls do, but yeah, good start point.
Oh, that's great. So one of the challenging things, of course, can be deciding who to invite and who not to, right?
Yeah. And you know what? I think a lot of girls feel pressure from people once they find out they're getting married. They feel this pressure that they want to invite them as well, or even from guests that they want to be invited. And so I always recommend a list A and a list B. And so your list A is your must-haves. And if you're having a small wedding, that the list B is great because then as you get RSVPs that maybe they are declining to attend, you can go to the next list and start adding people in. But I think because we're seeing such a huge increase in pricing of food, of like literally everything, your flowers, everything, stick to your limit. And if you've hired a planner, we've gone over your budget. We know already what your budget's going to accommodate, how many people, stick to it.
Wow. Okay, good advice there. What are some key points in deciding on food for the reception? You mentioned the price of food now going up, but
Yeah,
something
I
to
mean, and you
consider.
can choose buffet and plated, and I've seen some really creative ideas out there. Food trucks is a great idea. I've done a brunch wedding, which really decreased the food costs. We've done pizza parties. I've one client did a taco bar. Like there's lots of really creative things you can do if you can get away from the idea of a really fancy plated meal. So that also helps with staying in your budget.
Okay. What about lining up the right photographer and videographer and finding the right time and place for wedding pictures? So many things.
So many details. Yeah. And your photographer really is another important part of your decision. My recommendation is always to go on their Pinterest board or their Instagram or their Facebook and see what their style is, because every photographer has a unique editing style. Some photographers edit really dark photos. Some photographers edit really bright, really colorful. So you have to kind of choose what style you like. And then it's really important to meet with them face to face. Do you feel chemistry between the two of you? Are they energetic? Do they give you ideas? Because unless you're really good at positioning yourself for photos and you have a lot of creative ideas, that should be guided by your photographer. So that initial meeting with them is super important for a client.
Okay, good advice. So hiring a wedding planner is an extra expense, of course, but obviously some people believe it is well worth it. Now, you're a wedding planner yourself, so you might be a little biased on this one, but what are your thoughts?
Selling wedding planning is probably hardest because you don't know you need it until after. Um, my biggest point to a client is that when you're investing 20,000 and more, it's worth enjoying your investment. So a wedding planner alleviates the stress, takes all the details off your plate. You can just enjoy all the extras you have to do. But I also will save clients a lot of money. I have great connections. I've done hundreds of weddings, so I know what is necessary, what isn't. Make sure that you have all the details in place. It's not only an investment in having a stress-free wedding, it's also an investment in saving you money, which is a hard sell when you have to pay for a planner. But I'm there to, if we have weather issues, it's my decisions that will take over. You don't have to worry about it. I have hemmed bridesmaids' dresses. I have made quick boutonnieres. I'm just there to handle all the extras that come up in a wedding.
Yeah, I know for me, Pinterest and Etsy were basically my wedding planners. I did everything myself. So I use those as great inspirational tools for sure, but I could have certainly used some expert advice for sure. So what got you motivated to start an event planning business like this?
I was working as an executive assistant. One of my main roles was to help plan her business parties and events. She had several businesses that she owned. And then it just morphed into more administration. And I did that for about 7 years. And then my daughter got married. And I've done planning. I can do this. I planned her wedding and I found that I missed out so much of her day. I was so busy taking care of all the details. And looking back, it was a huge regret for me. I didn't just relax and enjoy her day. I was making sure everything was getting set up. And then I get a text, please come up. We want to zip up her dress. I just missed so much of her day. And so I did a little bit of research, found it was an area that was missing in our Medicine Hat and Southern Alberta area. And so I took some courses, got some training, did my business plan, and dove in. And it's been a really great career. I love it. I love working with my clients. I love the day. It's a party. It's just a really positive business to be involved in. So,
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
that's wonderful for you. It's sad that you missed out on some of those key moments of her wedding. And yeah, no, I totally understand with having, things. I mean, like things do happen on wedding days, right? And people forget things, something breaks or it gets misplaced. So, do you think it's essential to have someone assigned to oversee things and to have maybe that so-called runner at the ready to go get things?
Well, as a wedding planner, yes. If you absolutely cannot hire a wedding planner, there's lots of other options. Even having me come on board to help you plan. There's those kind of options available for girls if they can't actually have somebody at their day. And if that's the case, I would highly recommend point people and get yourself together a little kit of how to deal with emergencies like hemming and flowers that are coming apart and all those kind of things. But have a point person so that you, as the bride or even as the bride's family, don't have to handle the things that come up. One of the things that we don't remember is that if it's your wedding or your daughter's wedding or your son's wedding, you are so emotionally invested in the day. It's sometimes hard to step back and handle an emergency quickly and efficiently, which is something a wedding planner does because I'm not emotionally impacted by the day. So I can make those quick decisions and I can sit down and come up with a plan of how are we going to handle this. And yeah, I think it's well worth the money, but like you said, I'm a little bit biased.
Yeah, no, totally makes sense. Okay, so back to the basics here. Any thoughts on wedding decor or colors or choosing wedding flowers?
Oh my goodness, like you said, Pinterest, it's our planner.
Yeah,
And
it was my
um,
best friend. It
oh,
really is.
absolutely. And it can be your worst enemy too. So that's the other thing I tell girls. As soon as we've decided on what your decor is going to be like, we don't look at Pinterest anymore because then there's just so many ideas. It overwhelms you. But to keep your wedding cohesive, have your fonts matching, have your colors matching, have it go throughout your whole day is the piece of advice I would give girls when they're planning their wedding. And just there's lots of trends and trends will always change because we're always trying to keep our market, right? So this is your day. Make this a day that you love. That's about you and your partner. And yeah, just everybody else will have their opinion.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, speaking of opinions, I could have used your expert opinion that day. I personally struggled with picking colors. I don't know why. I just like too many colors, I guess. It was like the hardest decision for me. It was funny. So, and of course, like afterwards, what about having a setup and cleanup cruise? I guess that's before and after. Would that be
yes,
like the
and venues
wedding?
are starting to offer that as a service, and it's a service I offer as well. A cleanup crew, we come in because a lot of venues have such strict timelines. So your music's off at 12:30 and your bar is closed by 1 and you have to be actually out of the venue by 2 a.m. It's nobody wants to do that. It's pretty melodramatic after your wedding to have to clean up. So have a team, assign a few people, have the jobs outlined, and make sure they're people that you can trust, that they're not going to be having enjoyed their day too much and are inebriated or whatever. Like, just make sure you have a really good team that will load everything up and a good plan in place. There's a few things most clients don't consider when they come to me, and that is your cleanup and also how you're going to get to your place for the night, how you're going to get away from your event. They plan everything up to, but it's the after that is forgotten. So that's a huge recommendation for girls that are planning their own day.
Right, good advice there. Also, maybe like remembering to get your marriage license. Again, get the clergy, the officiants lined up. There's a lot of details.
Yes, there is. And that's really important. You can get your marriage license up to 3 months in advance. Make sure you have pieces of ID. Make sure you know your parents' names, maiden names, and that both of you have to be there. So those are just, yeah, some little details about your marriage license. And also with your clergy, whoever you are going to hire, whether it's an officiant or a clergy, or I know a lot of girls are choosing that officiant for a day. Again, make sure that you've met them face to face and you feel compatible. That's the most important for me, my opinion. The most important part of your day is your ceremony. You're covenanting together for life. So make sure the person is, you feel comfortable with them, that they can make it personal for you. And just that face-to-face with them beforehand is really important.
I've heard of weddings where they forgot to make seating arrangements for the reception. So that could also add some extra stress, I suppose.
I said it's like walking into the high school cafeteria in grade 8. Where do I sit?
Oh, no.
And I think having a seating chart or place cards shows your guests that you actually have thought of them. And it makes you, as a guest, feel like you're an important part of this day too. It also alleviates that confusion. If you aren't having a seating chart, you have to plan for extra tables in case there's empty spots at a table, that people have a place to go, that you're not separating couples. I always, always recommend either place cards or a table seating chart. So important.
Yeah. If the couple is having a dance, any advice on preparing for that? You probably need to be aware of who's in attendance, or maybe age groups or cultural groups.
Yes, and comfortable shoes. So often girls are sending out on their invitations, what is your preferred, do you have a few songs that will get you up on the dance floor, which is a great idea, because then you're hitting all the age groups that are there. You're hitting all the genres of music that will be represented. So that's a really great addition for your wedding invitation, is let me know your favorite dance songs. And then if you give that list to your DJ, you know you're going to have a great dance party.
Awesome. We're about out of time here, but really quickly, any final advice for those planning a wedding in the next while?
Hire a wedding planner. My best piece of advice. Yeah, we'll save you money and we'll give you a great day. And just to remember that it's your wedding day and you're going to get so many opinions, and it doesn't matter because this is your day and you want to remember it as something that really reflected you as a couple, reflected your love story. That's probably the biggest piece of advice I would give.
Great advice. Thanks so much for your expertise today, Kim. Great having you on.
It was my pleasure.
Absolutely. Kim Friesen is a wedding planner and owner of Weatherwood Events in Medicine Hat, Alberta. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here. Thanks so much for watching.